Okay, we've been joined by our Dead Animals Society. We've been joined by 9 observers, who some of them have got here by taxi, some of them have got here walking all the way up here. Hope you've enjoyed the walk, and we're at a height now of 740 metres above sea level. So we're quite high up. I hope you can still breathe all right. And you're not having any altitude oxygen problems here at all. And you've come at a very good moment, because we're now going to feed back on the discussion of 3 questions from Dead Poets Society, from the film which we watched yesterday in response to the death of Robin Williams. And I think Eva is going to, the first question we're going to address is the positive and negative aspects of the methodology of John Keating, the kind of hero, I guess, of the film Dead Poets Society. Director was what's his first name? Frank Weir. Peter Weir, who's actually an Australian, isn't he? Yeah, director. Frank says somebody has to be Australian. Oh, okay. So, Eva, if you could summarise your discussion that you had, nice and loud, so that we can all hear. The acoustics are good here. The dead animals are ensuring that the acoustics are good. Yeah.
Well, so yes, we discussed it, and we found it some points which are positives and which are negatives. So one of the positives is that he made literature like a real. So he involved the students into the literature to interest them somehow, and that's what we liked about it. But the negative part of it, that he didn't respect the rules of the school. And the other thing was that he thought that his subject is the most important. So he didn't think about it that these guys are going to be managers, bankers, and they don't need it from this professional point of view, but they need it from the personal point of view. So that's what we were talking about.
Okay, and who's going to summarise your... Anna?
We really like that he treated his students as partners. He really trusted them, he tried to provoke them and inspire them in many different ways. He really tried to get the best out of them. Reciting that poem was like the best example for that. And about negatives, the part of school rules is to respect the school's property, and he went actually against this rule by asking them to rip out the pages from the book. Actually we discussed the same, that he thought that his subject is the most important, and probably he put other teachers in a funny position.
Hannah?
Well, we discussed that actually he opened the minds of the students. He showed them different possibilities, so he was very student-centered, and he instilled their minds with freedom. And on the other hand, the school was so traditional, so they couldn't cope. Actually, also the other teachers and the head teacher couldn't cope with this at that time. But there was one sentence. He told to the student that they can do what they want after they finish the school. And I think that they could cope with it quite well. So they knew they had to finish their studies, and then life would be open for them. And the turning point, connected with Neil, was that his father told him to go to military school for 10 years. And at this age, he said 10 years is a lifetime for me. So he couldn't cope with being at another place for 10 years, and that was, I think, the main reason why he actually decided to commit suicide.
Can we come to the next group? Who is going to summarise?
Okay.
Frank?
Positive things. We talked about how innovative he was, bringing new ideas, and I think through his little teaching devices, he made his subject very interesting, and he got his students engaged with poetry and English. And he was very energising, and I think he also got his students to think about what really mattered to them. And I think all of those are good things. On the negative side, he very much had to be in the middle of things. So I think he was unconsciously an attention seeker himself, and that's not necessarily a very good thing for a teacher. He didn't accommodate. Several people have talked about the rules of the school, so okay, he wanted to do things differently, but I think there was a way of doing things differently without creating conflict, and he created conflict with the traditions and rules of the school, and he also created conflict with his students, who he encouraged, maybe not directly, but he encouraged them to go against the established ways of doing things in the school, and that created problems for them as well. And I think he showed a little bit of irresponsibility in the way he chose to use his power as a teacher. That's it.
Okay. I'd like to introduce one thing to this discussion. He encouraged the students to call him what? Captain. My captain, yeah? Which is a quote from Rakesh?
Walt Whitman.
A quote from, well, Captain, my captain. Now, the things that we've been talking about this week on the course have been about handing over power and responsibility. Now, if a teacher goes into a school and encourages people to say, Captain, my captain, is there a problem with this at all?
Contradiction. Captain is somebody who is superior in status, so he was still reinforcing the differential in status.
Frank, did you see any problem in Captain, my captain?
Well, I don't think it's so much in the words, Captain, my captain. I just think he needed so much love himself. Julie had an interesting idea about his girlfriend in England. She thought that maybe his girlfriend in England had actually died, and that he was emotionally unstable, perhaps. And certainly you could see it from a certain point of view as the behaviour of someone who was trying to compensate for something by demanding the love of a group of people who were quite vulnerable. Students are quite vulnerable. And he really was, in one way, I think, an attention seeker. So I think that's the problem, not getting them to call him Captain, my captain.
I mean, could he be seen as actually someone who is very selfish and puts his needs above his students' needs?
He certainly had a very strong idea of himself. The very first time we see him in the film, at the opening of the school year, and he's introduced, and he's sitting at the end of the line of teachers, and he's got a kind of smirk on his face, and he looks like, you know, I'm going to shake things up. So right from the beginning, he's a very self-possessed individual who looks very pleased with himself. But often that hides an underlying insecurity as well.
The last thing that we did this morning, do you remember the last thing that we did with Rakesh this morning? What did we do?
The envelope
activity. The envelope activity. And what was the last thing that we filmed?
The last thing that we filmed, say one thing what I'm going to take with me, and the last thing after that it was last thing that I'm going to do when I get back in September.
To introduce in your lessons. Yeah? Now if we think of when I did my applied linguistics degree in 1991-92, the people said that you will go out into the world, you'll have jobs as teacher trainers, and you have a huge responsibility to respect the tradition of the institution in which you work in, because there will be people there who've worked there for years, and if you go in there with some kind of romantic commitment to certain principles of communicative language teaching, and you go in there with a smirk on your face and say, actually, what I'm doing is best, and what you're doing is rubbish, you won't get very far. And I'd like to just raise this question about John Keating as somebody who actually goes in there, wants a lot of positive feedback from his students, but somebody who does nothing to actually look at how you bring about change. And you don't bring about change, do you, by going in and ripping up books and then saying, actually, what I'm doing is the best. You were talking about this, about the ripping up the books. Monica, can you just say what you said in your discussion about going in and ripping up books?
Yeah, the thing I didn't like, he actually taught children not to show respect to somebody else's work, because the person who actually wrote the book or the chapter in the book must have worked really hard, and it was his idea, and doesn't mean if I don't agree with anybody or somebody else's work, I'm not gonna show respect. They worked hard, that's their opinion, and I just show respect and just leave it. I say, okay, this is something I don't agree with, but I'm okay with that, because million people have got million different opinions.
Anybody else want to say anything about that? Yes?
How would you want to inspire respect if you don't show respect in the first place?
I can't stop thinking about one of my colleagues who work in Bratislava, and when you were talking about Mr. Keating as an attention seeker, and it was just his image in front of my face. He was like very lonely foreigner in Bratislava, and what he did, he put like all his energy like only for the class, but he was extremely arrogant to his colleagues. And it really made me think like he was really good with students, but he didn't treat us equal as a partners like on the other hand. So yeah, I just wanted to share this. Yeah.
We were talking at the end about the boys standing on the tables, and there were perhaps 6 or 7 of them, but when you look at the shot of the whole class, there were more of them seated than standing. So did Keating win in the end or not?
He began.
I think he did.
But it was not win-and-win situation, was it? Like, he wanted to prove a point. I think that he managed to inspire some people. Not all of the people would be inspired, and I didn't feel that everybody should stand up. Like, the ones who felt for him and who felt the same energy stood up there. The others were not actually... They remained seated because they couldn't identify with this idea, which I thought was okay. At least he managed to inspire several people to stand up for themselves, I felt. So it's not like win and lose situation, in my opinion.
Could it be argued that what he was doing was very divisive? That he went into the school, he had a certain view of how to teach, he encouraged students to love him, and he took no notice of the other teachers in the school about how to build bridges, about how to initiate change. You may have problems with the way in which things happen in the school, but if you do it in a way in which you get the students on your side against other teachers, isn't that a very irresponsible thing to do as a teacher?
Wrong way. It's just wrong way, I think.
But all of you are going to face this problem, this issue, if you do as many of you promised this morning, when I go back to my school, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. I'm going to take risks. I'm going to try out new things. And there's a danger of what happened to John Keating happening to you unless you take other people with you. I'm not trying to dissuade you from trying out new things. The whole course has been about persuading you to take risks and try out new things. But what the film clearly illustrates are the dangers of being a revolutionary, if you will.
I don't know if I'm sorry. I just wanted to add that I might misunderstood the end of the film, but there was a scene when Keating was standing in a kind of a tower in his office and staring out of the window, and there was the other geology teacher, and he was walking outside with the students, and they exchanged a kind of a smile, and I would interpret it as like Keating finds at least somebody who also tried some new methods. Like he didn't teach students his subject from a book, but he went out and showed this is stone, this is, I don't know what was it exactly. At least he started something.
You said this several times this week, don't throw away the baby with the bath water. I think we should find the right balance between the new and the old.
Ojisa, you wanted to say something?
I wanted to say that I have this impression that he made the situation like it was him and those students who were his students with him, engaged in poetry and everything. And on the other side were other teachers and other students. But it could be a different situation. He would have had maybe more teachers on his side if he acted at some point in the other way, I think. Maybe he would have had this geography teacher on his side if he did something, or some other teachers, we don't know. But in the film I have an impression that it was him and those 5-6 boys one side, and like totally opposite side was the headmaster, other teachers and other students who were not engaged in his story. But you can make things different without making this making other things be opponents or enemies. It doesn't have to be like that. You can do your own thing without hurting other students or other colleagues. I simply think that.
Yes, I agree. It was just a response to my answer was a response to Rakesh's question, whether he did win or lose. So that's why I mentioned. But I absolutely agree. Like he shouldn't be so radical.
And you see that you mentioned is perfect. I think perfect example where we see at least that he had some kind of a support. He wasn't left like nobody wanted to speak to him. It was like a wave from a teacher, something, or a smile or something like that, yes. But if he had acted in the other way towards his colleagues, I think that things would have been much different. For him, for the students, for the colleagues, for the whole atmosphere and situation. That's just my opinion.
It's just the way things are nowadays. But we are talking, back then, in the school, in the tradition and honor that they stick to. I mean, you need to be radical and revolutionary to achieve something. So in that regard, in that respect, there was no other way. I mean, it's either-or situation. She couldn't have obliged to the school rules because they were against his philosophy of doing things, I think. So, attention seeker, I would agree, but I think there was no other way for Mr. Keating to achieve what he did, I feel. So you can't kind of get your other teachers on your side because they stick to these values you're against. You know, so
what did he achieve?
Like he showed them that there is another way of thinking, that they can be whatever they decide to be.
6, 7 boys.
At least, but 6, 7 boys means more and more and more people. It just kind of.
You've got to start somewhere.
Yeah.
And that's where what we've been saying.
It didn't be all 60 of them or whatever.
But don't you, when you go, if you have a new job and you go into a school, isn't the first place, your first responsibility, to build bridges with your colleagues?
Yeah.
And not to get a fan club of students?
Yeah. I just feel like there are some people who feel really special and good about themselves if they are different. And if they are not, like, they'll kind of lose their power. So I just feel like he was like one of them. Like if somebody else had the same idea, I mean, it would be very interesting. So yeah, so probably that was also the reason why he didn't even try.
Because I remember the other scene where they were talking together. Was the headmaster of a school in a literature class, and he used to teach literature before, and he said it was very hard for me to give up. So he wanted to tell him that I really love this subject, and he didn't said anything. He didn't start the conversation as well. So it was another chance for him to build a bridge, maybe.
Dragica, how can you achieve anything if you go into a school, get the students on your side, without working with your colleagues?
No, I'm not saying that you can achieve something, I mean, anything in this way. I just, in the context of the film I was speaking, like those traditional schools couldn't have been steered up unless somebody did something that radical. That's what I had in mind. But if you do not cooperate, I agree that you can't achieve anything, because you'd be, you know, there will be so many obstacles to overcome that you, in my context, you'll give up. So, of course, it's important to cooperate with your colleagues, if they're willing to do so, you know, but...
Wouldn't the film have been a lot deeper as a film if it had shown relationships, John Keating's relationships with other teachers and how that worked?
Can I say something?
Yes.
What Dragica said that it was back in that time. I don't think that it was so long ago. It was not like in 19th century or something. It was in the 80s, if I'm right. Or
the film was made in 1989, so it's 25 years ago. But it was set early. Yes.
It was not so long ago. But I also think that when you go to work somewhere, usually you have some idea of what you're going to. For example, when I go to a new job, don't I know where I'm going to? What is the tradition of school? What are the rules of the school? That we change shifts. I don't like changing shifts, for example, but that's the way how that school works. He could have known that this school had this strong tradition and strict rules, and all his ideas, he could have made them a bit softer, I think. Maybe he could have helped him in a way. If Hannah can say something.
Martina wants to say something first. Yeah.
The first thing that came to my mind when there was the beginning of the film was that how could Mr. Keating get the job? Like.
Actually,
but
he had been a pupil in that school.
Yeah, I know, but how could he get you know, through the interview, or what plans did he show to the principal that he was going to apply in? I don't know. That's my vision, or that's my
question.
No, that's my image of, or how I. How can I say it? I don't know.
His methods.
No, how the job interview, like what did he say to the principal so that he took him, and so he had the plan to be different before, I think, because if he had told the principal his plans, he wouldn't get the job, definitely. And the other thing that now I realized is that I have never looked at the movie and Mr. Keating in this way, like to find any things that he could do differently or better, or he didn't do good. I always saw him like as a hero.
As a hero,
but I personally like basically almost every year I go to a new job, and I have to first listen what's the tradition and what are the pillars of the institution where I work, and I have to fit in, but I often get new ideas, but I'm not. I don't act like he, or I don't like. I know that this won't work if I did this.
Well, many people watch this film and say they like it so much because they're inspired by John Keating as a teacher. I use this film in teacher development sessions to show how not to be when you get a new job and you go into a school.
Mr. Keating wasn't the humble man to start with, and I think that my ideas are somehow better than the ideas of other people, even considering they are older and have experience, is bad.
Since we've had this discussion, which has lasted 27 minutes and 57 seconds, yeah? Is there anybody in this room who has kind of shifted their position or changed their mind a little bit about John Keating?
Clearly Martina has.
Yes.
You have, Martina. Anybody else? Monica?
I just remember seeing that film ages ago, maybe when it was first out. Yesterday I had bad migraine, so I didn't watch it. But after this discussion I realized, yeah, I saw it completely differently in the past. I thought like, oh wow, he's cool, he's the hero. And I was like, oh, maybe not. Yeah, so I changed my mind. Yeah.
Anybody else? At all?
Me too.
Yeah? In what way, Eva?
More to the reality. I let myself to flow away. That how cool is it to change everything? But I realized that I can't change everything. I have to take something, because everything has two parts, positives and negatives. And I have to take out the positives of the before things how they were, and stick them, join them with the new things.
Etta, you mentioned you wanted to say something.
I think I've got nothing new to say.
Rakesh?
I just want to say, I think we've said quite a lot about this particular film, but Robin Williams also starred in another film which is to do with education and learning and how you teach, which is called Good Will Hunting. If you haven't seen it, go and watch that again in the light of this discussion, because it raises similar issues about teaching and learning and so on. So, and that will give you a different angle on all this.
I have one thought that just occurred to me. I still see the biggest monster in the film as not being Keating, but the school itself. And I think one way of looking at it is that Keating himself is a victim of this school. He went to this school, probably got the job just because he'd gone to that school. And his arrogance and self-confidence are a direct product of the school itself. So.
Interesting. Interesting. Yeah. Well, thanks for that truly great discussion. Rakesh wanted to say something
That
else.
wants me to say my point about the society, because there was a question: who is responsible for his suicide? And I mentioned society because I think that it was not important in that society that what you want. That it was important what's important for society. So they're not looking for your supportive thing, what you want, just what's important for us.
Is that the last word?
She started, she finished.
She started, she finished. That's very nice. Well, thanks for that. I really think that was a fantastic discussion, and maybe when we put this on the internet, this might be one of the most interesting discussions about this film that I've actually seen, yeah, that's taken place. And I think this discussion might be useful for a lot of other people to watch, and the kind of things that we've talked about. So thanks very much. I said that we were the dead animals, the dead animal society. Yeah? I certainly think we've had a discussion which has been very intelligent.
I think we're the dead tired teacher society.
The dead tired teacher society. So this is actually the last formal session of our course, and what a great place to have it. And thank you, Martin, for coming along and joining us. I first met Martin in Bulgaria in April at a conference, and he lives in eastern Slovakia, and he's come specially to be with us. Yvette as well. I don't know where Yvette's. Oh, Yvette's over here. Yvette has joined us as well. So, you know, lots of exciting things going on. But I just like to say a final word about the course. And for me, I've done lots and lots of teacher development courses, and I can honestly say that this course is in the top 3 of all the courses I have ever done. And thank you for being such wonderful, for cooperating in such a wonderful way. Let's party.